Hi, I'm John F. Allen.
And I'm R.J. Sullivan.
And we're the Two Towers.
Greetings and welcome to the Two Towers Talk Show. I'm your host, John F. Allen, Tower 1.
And I'm R.J. Sullivan, Tower 2.
Today's episode, we will be discussing and reviewing The Chi, an American drama series created by Lena Waithe about life in the neighborhood of the South Side of Chicago. The pilot was directed by Rick Famuyiwa and premiered on Showtime on January 7th, 2018. The Chi is described as following a fateful turn of events that sends shockwaves through a community on the south side of Chicago and connects the lives of Emmett, Brandon, Ronnie, and Kevin in unexpected ways. And so just to let our listeners know, this is a very, very popular show that Showtime produces, and it's gotten great reviews. It's got an 87% approval rating based on 46 reviews, averaging a 7.47 out of 10. Lot of praise on Metacritic. It was weighted average score of 73 out of 100 based on 22 critics. So very favorable reviews where this show is concerned. And just so you would know, this show was recently renewed for season 4. So we will be covering seasons 1 through 3. And what we're going to do is we're going to go over the show in general and give our ratings for the show as a whole, just going through some of the key points that are what the show is about. And then on the second half of this episode is when we'll get into spoilers, and we'll let you know when we're about to drop the spoilers. So let's get into this. What I can say personally about this show is that it is awesome. I compare it in greatness to The Wire, which is one of the most critically acclaimed shows out there in modern history. And the reason why I give it so much praise is because it's fearless. In a lot of ways, it is very fearless, and the acting is very well done. The writing is very well done. Now, we're going to talk about the hiccups that come along with this show that were due to some behind-the-scenes production things that were going on that kind of threatened to derail the show. But luckily, I think the strength of the writing and the diversity of the cast and the acting of the cast is what kept that from being a reality. What are your thoughts on this, RJ?
Well, just to give, I think, people like who maybe don't have Showtime, maybe haven't been following it. I want to take a real general step back a little bit. This is the story. You're following several folks on the south side of Chicago who are stuck in generally a poor section and a gang-riddled section. And it follows, you have a group of very young kids who are kind of middle school age and several teenagers. And then most of them are adults who are just stuck. They're stuck here. It really puts a magnifying glass on what it's like to try to live day to day in a place like that. I went in thinking that this thing was going to be oppressively hopeless and really, really tough to watch, and it was going to be just, pushing the points of what inequality of modern society has caused. And a lot of that is there. A lot of it was eye-opening to me. A lot of it I certainly was partially aware of, but when you're watching people that you like and care about go through that, there's a lot here to dig into as far as what the show is trying to communicate about the circumstances of several people. However, the show I found. So this was John's recommendation, and I want to take a step back and talk about. He basically said to me, when you get into this, RJ, it's gonna be like Game of Thrones, and don't get too attached to too many characters because people are gonna die, and it's really violent. And I guess that kind of had me prepared for something even more intense than it is. But what I found is, getting into the program, it has a lot of heart. It has a lot of optimism. These are people who, they do find their opportunities. They do maximize their opportunities. Like anyone else, they're trying to find a better way, sometimes a better way out of their situation. And then sometimes you watch people who are stuck in a situation that they can't get out of, or they don't know how to get out of. And so you watch all these different characters, but there's a lot of fun. There's a lot of optimism, and there's a lot of community and people looking out for each other, and a lot of awareness from people about where other people are coming from. And so, I don't want to oversell, the fact that it's a pay series. It's very violent. You do have gangsters acting like gangsters. You have, but you have a lot of there's just a lot of optimism here in its own way. And so I came away having a much fuller experience by the time I got to the other side than I was expecting going in. And it's a very rich show, and it's got a lot to say about a lot of different things. And I give it a very, very high recommendation. And I had really not heard of the show, but I'm really glad you pointed it out, John, and suggested it for the program.
Yes, I concur with what you've said about the show. It does have a lot of optimism, a lot of hope, but that is in its core. The outside wrapping does deal with a lot of the reality that comes along with being Black and living in an inner city neighborhood in a large metropolitan city. And I have some experiences there. I did not grow up in Chicago. I grew up in Indianapolis in the 70s, 80s, and I spent time in the inner city, lived there. There was a lot of violence and things that I witnessed as a kid that a lot of people who lived out in the suburbs had only seen on television. And I'd seen all of these things before I reached adulthood. Some of them when I was in single digits in age, and other times in double digits. But the thing about this show is that, and one of the reasons why I recommended that we discuss and review it, was the heart of the show and the acting and the real life portrayal and the real essence of Black community. A lot of times in mainstream media, you see people portrayed from the inner city as being hopeless, helpless, and having a lack of intellect, a lack of family dynamic, a lack of everything that is good and or wholesome. And that's simply erroneous. Now, I'm not saying that everybody in the hood is, family valued and, that they have the greatest intentions or greatest direction in their lives. That's not true. It's also not true in the suburbs. But let's be clear that when you think of the hood, if you think of Southside of Chicago, you think violence, you think gangs, you think people who are maybe ignorant and don't want anything better. And that's not the case. I know that's not the case. And I'm glad that this show is showing that that's not the case. Because a lot of times in mainstream media, that's what's depicted, because that's what people think, that's what they've come to expect. And this show shows them something different, and I'm grateful for that. And that was one of the reasons why I suggested it, because I wanted you, our listeners, to get a chance to see where we were coming from with regards to this show, and maybe check it out if you haven't already. And of course, hit us back with your feedback, what you think about the show, what you liked, what you didn't like, and how the show affected you after viewing it. So that was definitely up there with the reasons of why I suggested that we discuss and review this show. Just so people can get an understanding of the show, this show deals with not just crime and criminality in Southside Chicago. It also deals with family structure, dynamics, how important family is, how family isn't always blood, how people who are in those circumstances can be stars and very talented and very intelligent and gifted, but given the circumstances, sometimes they aren't allowed to shine, or they are put into a set of choices that you're either going to shine or you're going to survive. And those are hard decisions to be made. And sometimes it can be in place the individuals in a situation where their backs are against the wall and they have to come out swinging just to be able to see another day. And that's something that a lot of people in outlying areas and of other ethnicities may not be able to understand, because that's not something that they've ever lived or experienced or know people intimately who have. And I think that that's why this is very important.
And another point which you were kind of hinting at, there are a lot of people in the series who they just want what everyone else wants. They want to live their life, they want to get on, and like the kids, just because of the school they go to, a lot of them have a lot of disadvantages, not because of anything they could possibly control, but the school they're in doesn't have the budget to do a lot of things that a lot of schools around them do, and the chances for them, to get scholarships or move to better schools, simply not there. And it doesn't put a judgment value on any of that. It simply points out these are good kids. There's a trio of kids that are focused on in the middle school. Kevin is the main character, I'd say. Papa's my favorite. he's the pudgy little nerd guy. And Jake is the younger brother of Reg, who is he's involved in gangs, and that makes things tougher for him. But the three of them together are shown most of the time just sitting around goofing off. They try out for their the school play and other such things, and they're acting like the sorts of things that people in the suburbs who didn't have these kinds of challenges, they're doing a lot of the same things, but just simply because of the school they went to, applying to college is going to be tougher. Trying to do the things that most of us would want to do to better ourselves, it's made tougher simply because of where they are and trying to move up from there. Mm-hmm. These are sorts of things you kind of understand intellectually. But one of the characters in here is trying to apply for college, and you watch them just having to deal with that. It's like they have great grades, they have all the things that they need, but they're going to have a tougher time getting in simply because this is the area that they were kind of forced to grow up in. So it brings a lot of things to the forefront that I think those of us who don't deal with that maybe aren't as aware. So,
absolutely.
And it's never done in a preachy way. It's not done to, it's never lecturing at you. It's simply, here we're watching these characters deal with things, and this is the way it goes out. And I'm sitting here going, I never had to deal with that. I never had to deal with that. I never had to even think about these kinds of things. So, yeah, very good.
Yeah. One of the things that I wanted to discuss are that we're going to discuss here is the characters. So let's get into the characters. We've got one of the main characters. He started to be a main character in more so in season 2, but he was a definite important character starting in season 1 and throughout, and that was who RJ mentioned, Kevin Williams. He's played by Alex Hibbert. Now, the young man, Alex Hibbert, the actor, he also played in the Black Panther. He was the kid with the cornrow braids at the playground at the end of the movie. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen Black Panther. But so he's one of the 3 young kids that is major character in this series. So let's also talk about Shamon Brown Jr., who plays Stanley Papa Jackson. And then we've got Michael Epps, who plays Jake Taylor. Now, these are the 3 kids, the main kids that RJ was speaking about. And you see a dynamic between this trio. They're the best of friends. They're really tight. And they're just like kids anywhere you go. They hang out and, they go through different things that kids go through. They're dealing with starting to notice girls and how that affects them and everything. So, getting jobs, working after school and on the weekends, all the things that any average kid would be doing. What makes these characters stand out are the performances by the actors. These kids do an amazing job with these parts. You believe them, you believe the camaraderie, and you're rooting for them. You are in their corner. Even when they're doing this stuff that is like, oh, that's not a good decision.
Right.
You want them to succeed. They all, in their heart, in the core of who they are, they're all 3 good kids. And like RJ said, Papa is something else. So let's start with Kevin and we'll go through. Kevin is like the cool, nerdy one. He's a nerd, but he's cool about it, but he's kind of shy. He's a little awkward, but he's kind of the one that, straddles the fence with everything, I would say, even though he's the standout between the 3. He is the one that I was alluding to that's very intelligent. So he took a test and he got accepted to an elite school because he's really, really smart. And then you've got Jake, who is the gangster of the 3. Because of his family, his brother's a gangster, his mother was basically kind of sold him to feed her drug habit when he was a younger child. He's had it rough, but at his core, he's still a good kid, and he tries to do the right thing, and he's very loyal to his friends and to his family. And then you have Papa. So Papa is a PK, which is a preacher's kid. His father is a minister at a church, and he grew up in the church, and he's very spiritually grounded. But Papa is a trip because Papa's the biggest nerd of the 3. He is the smart one that's just, the one that just talks so much, and you like, will you shut up, please? We did not need to know all of that, But he's the glasses wearing, kind of heavy set kid that people would normally discount first looking at him. But Lord, let me tell you, Papa put on his clothes, Papa put out his step, and the girls take notice. That it's like, okay, so he's like the kid that people would discount just because he's heavy set, wears glasses, and is kind of goofy. But let him put his mind to being cool, and people will take notice. and he's very loyal to both Jake and Kevin.
Mm-hmm.
3 kids, I can't say enough about them. The actors do an excellent job. Jason Mitchell, who is the main character of season 1 and season 2, you may know him from Straight Outta Compton. He played Eazy-E in the film about NWA, the rap group. And he also played in Kong, Skull Island. He was one of the soldiers. And I have to say that Jason Mitchell, when I've seen him perform, I really liked what he's done. I've really liked what I've seen him in as an actor. Now, just to get this out of the way, there was some controversy with him on the set of this, and we'll talk about the results of that. But, you know, that aside, putting strictly his talent on the table, I think that he's a very good actor. You also have another character here in the first season that we're going to get to here. That's Coogie and Coogie Johnson. And so Coogie Johnson is played by Joaquin Gilroy, and he is Brandon's brother, younger brother. They had the same mother, different fathers. And some of the things that happen with them are the impetus for the show as it moves forward. We have Ronnie Davis, who is a Gulf War veteran who comes back and suffers from PTSD and a bunch of other issues that he has, reintegrating back into society. He stays with his grandmother, who basically raised him because his mother, you know, had issues and was not there for him.
That character is played by Intare Guma Mabaho Mwani.
Actor who portrays Ronnie, they are standout. And I have to give it to the actor. He does an excellent job in this role.
Have you seen him in anything else, John?
I have, and I can't think of it right off the top of my head, but I have seen him before, because when I started watching this series, I was like, oh, yeah, I've seen him before. And I would think that, you know, he would be somebody that you would want to watch with regards to other performances and other shows and other movies. As an actor, he's really done he did a good job. And now I remember where I'd seen him before. I saw him in Treme. It was a show about New Orleans.
Okay.
And he was also in Heroes. And that's where I had seen him before. And then more recently, like with The Chi, he was in a TV show called The Siren, which is about mermaids, and he was in an episode of Bosch and Lethal Weapon, but he was also in a movie called The Queen of Katwe, which starred Lupita Nyong'o and Oyelowo. So yes, those were that was a Disney movie. So going back to him, his performance in this show is excellent. We've got a lot of standout performances. We've got Jacob Lattimore as Emmett, who's another character who gets developed more going into season 3. And then we've got Tiffany Boone, who plays Brandon's girlfriend. She's her parents are real estate moguls, and she's getting into her real estate and politics, and she's went to college, and she has a degree, and you know, so she's on the upper end of things, and of course her parents don't particularly approve of her having a relationship with Brandon, who, you know, basically works in a kitchen, or works in a restaurant in the kitchen as like a sous chef, a line chef, and he's wanting his own restaurant, and he's very good at what he does. But, you know, of course, you've got people who are going to look down their noses at you no matter what. And the actress Tiffany Boone, she also played on the Amazon Prime original show, The Hunters, which is a good show that you might want to check out. She was really badass in that. There are a lot of other actresses and characters and actors and characters that, we'll go through. One more that I'll mention before we move any further is Burgundy Baker as KIESHA, who is Kevin's sister.
Yeah.
And she does an excellent job. I think that, it's one of those situations where they got the right person and the dynamic. And what's interesting enough is that if you watch this show and you see the actor who plays Kevin, Alex Hibbert, and you see Burgundy Baker, who plays KIESHA, together, they actually look like brother and sister. They actually look alike, which is, I was like, wow. I had to look up to make sure they weren't related because they look that much alike to me. So, and then they had a very good dynamic. So I definitely can't say enough about that.
Yeah. So I'll jump in there, and I want to talk about the three main characters as listed in the show credits and such. Brandon Johnson, the cook wannabe entrepreneur, really. He strives to better himself. And then you got Ronnie Davis, who's the vet, he seems very, kind of like the guy you see on the corner who just doesn't seem like he's motivated to do anything. You just figure he's a bum, and that's, he probably did something to get there. And, the show kind of presents him that way when you first meet him. And then you have Emmett, the teenager who's got, I don't know what, 3 different, and I got this term from the Shy, baby mamas. So,
yeah. Actually has 4, but yeah, it's
and I mean, when we first meet him, he's doing the business with someone else still, and it just, so you're presented with first impressions in the first episode, but nobody stays there. Nobody is locked into a certain type. I mean, Ronnie Davis, for instance, I did not even think was a main character when the show started. I thought he was there to serve a very specific purpose, and then we were going to move on from him. Emmett was another one. I think it took a long time for him to move to the front before I really thought of him as someone more than a secondary or tertiary character. And these characters don't stay in one place. You do deep dives on every one of them. It's very difficult to talk about because you get into spoiler territory really quick, but nobody is exactly what they seem, and nobody everybody has a journey. Most characters have some sort of a journey that takes them places, and they take the audience with you. So I really not quite sure what more we can say, because getting too deeper into it, you start blowing some of the surprises, and that in and of itself would be a disappointment.
Right. And so basically from here, I think we might want to go ahead and give our score or opinions for the show overall before we start getting into spoiler territory. So
because there's a lot to talk about, and if you've seen the show, I think you probably want to stick around and have the discussion with us in the comments, or hear what we have to say and see if you agree or disagree.
Absolutely. So let me say that let me reiterate, as I mentioned this before, this show is up there with The Wire for me, and a fan of The Wire and the content of that show and the acting within that show. That's a testimony to this particular series, in that that's how much I enjoy it. And, even when we get into the spoilers, we'll get into the points where it could have derailed very fast and very hard, but it ended up not derailing like that because of the strength of that writing and the strength of the acting. And that's a testimony to the show and its perseverance. That being said, on a scale of 1 to 5 towers, I'm giving this a 4.75.
You're doing my trick. You got to falling between the betweens. Yes.
Yes.
I came in a more solid 4.0. And the reason being has nothing to do with what's there in the show itself. Everything the show tries to do, it excels at. However, as we've kind of hinted at and danced around, the show had some cast changes and production problems beyond its control. And it reminds me very much of trying to watch. I think this is a really good way to discuss it without spoiling anything. For you hardcore sci-fi fans out there who have watched Babylon 5, you know that show went through a lot of production problems and had basically the captain change between season 1 and 2. Not only did it change between seasons, but right in the middle of several plot points. On the Shy, that happens a couple different times where you're following certain characters and then they're just not there anymore. And somewhere between seasons, things happened, and then you're not sure why until we dug around a bit and looked into the behind the scenes productions, which kind of explained why some things get wrapped up behind the scenes and why the show had to change direction a few times. But I mean, it's it's a fine line between do you hold the show at fault for that, because they work with all that stuff very, very well. However, it did disrupt the flow of the show a couple different times for me, so I can't entirely ignore it. So that is pretty much the only reason I came in at 4 instead of any higher. So that's a long way to explain something very simple, but that's pretty much it. I have nothing but good things to say about it otherwise, and I'm really anxious to start talking about the characters in detail and some of my favorite moments.
All right. So I think there you have it. Like RJ, the only thing that kept this from not being a 5, which I don't give those out, often, is the fact are those factors that he discussed with the production changes and things of that nature. That in and of itself, like I said, it didn't derail the show. It didn't derail the show for me with how I feel about it, but it was something that was enough to keep it from getting that perfect score. And I think that a lot of that has to do with how well I related to the show on a personal level.
This concludes part 1 of a 3-part series on The Shy. Join us Wednesday for part 2. And as always, stay nerdy. The Two Towers Talk Show is sponsored in part by OG Nerds, a new social media community dedicated to nerds of a certain age, 40 and over, although all are welcome. Members are encouraged to share articles and links on their favorite nerdy topics such as animation, anime, art, books, writing, comics, manga, movies, music, sports, tech, science, TV, video games, RPGs, and more. Be sure to visit them on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The Two Towers Talk Show is sponsored in part by Showtime Cinema in Mooresville, Indiana. Their friendly staff is always willing to go the extra mile to make your movie-going experience an enjoyable and memorable one. Enjoy the comfort of their new cushioned seating in their spacious auditoriums, and while you're there, be sure to stop by the concession stand and purchase some popcorn where real butter topping is an option. They're located at 300 South Bridge Street in Mooresville, Indiana. We hope to see you at the movies.